How the Light Gets In is the Institute of Art and Ideas' unique festival, combining days full of talks and debates in philosophy, politics, arts and science, with evenings full of music and dance. Get your tickets for the world's largest music and philosophy festival at howthelightgetsin.org.
I actually think that there is a lot of profound possibilities in self-expression through Selfie, for instance, and this kind of seemingly narcissistic, oftentimes excessive narcissism of constantly recording oneself at an arm's length. But I think the point to some degree has to do with the context and what kinds of things these self-expressions do and how they do it. In other words, are they actually in a conversation with others? Are they moving something? Are they doing something besides self-promotion, if that's part of it? Or is it part of a dialogue? I don't think we know the answer yet. But in part, this might be, in fact, I'm not putting it down, but I think it may be worth thinking about the fact that the generation of selfies is very young. It's largely teenage generation, actually. I remember myself as a teenager, and I have a son who was a teenager not so long ago, just about 4 or 5 years ago. And in a way, this obsession with self-expression, the way we are promoting it, the way we democratize, actually, vanity related to self-promotion, seems to me to be coming out of a as yet fully developed brain function in some ways. And that is, to me, this culture of the beautiful, the thin, the young, the self that is presented by the way self-promotion of Selfie perhaps puts forward is unlike what is the real life on the ground for majority of human beings on the planet Earth. I mean, think of it universally.
I'm just, that critique is always right, that often we're talking about a certain kind of privileged European citizens of liberal democracies. I think that's absolutely right. That they're the people with mobile phones very often, and I absolutely take that on board. But I'm always slightly reluctant at that critique of young people gurning into their phone, because when I teach young people, and when I...
So do I.
Yeah, of course, that's what I was saying. I teach young people too, that they're using a technology that's available to them, and we had our own technologies too, perhaps not visible in the same way, but they're using these technologies to fashion themselves, and they're claiming a certain agency in that, and I don't begrudge them that, but I do want to pick you up on this idea that Rembrandt was doing portraits rather than engaging in kind of narcissistic self-explorations, because it seems to me it's very interesting that you chose a male artist, and that we do live in a culture where often we berate young people, and women particularly, for being overly anxious about their appearance and self-presentation. And you could have easily have talked about Angelica Kauffman, right? One of the women founders of the Royal Academy in 1768 when it was founded. And Angelica Kauffman painted, dozens and dozens and dozens of self-portraits. And she did that. She painted herself with a paintbrush in hand, with a canvas in her lap. And she did that because she didn't have access to nude models. She wasn't allowed to draw in the same classes as the men. So you have to paint yourself if you're not allowed access to the same. And the same way, I think, when young women are tweeting, I'm really obsessed with a hashtag called Black Girl Magic, where lots of brilliant, beautiful black women are tweeting pictures of themselves or talking about themselves doing amazing things. And if you are a particular kind of subject that has not been permitted a mode of expression and articulation, or if your life is marginalised in a particular way, you might take that opportunity to present yourself in a particular way. And I wouldn't ever begrudge them that. I think go for it.
Could I take up on this one? Because it's I don't mean to dominate it between the two of us.
Helen or Stephen have anything to come in on those points?
No, I think you should respond.
So 2 points to make. One is, this is not to say begrudging this. Young people or women begrudging this to them. The point is there is an excess of it, and an excess of narcissism, which is not all over the place. But look, we constantly talk about this because it's all in front of our eyes. It's in our news, it's in our phones, it's everywhere. My students are not that way. I don't look at them that way. They're very young as they enter. They're 18, if that. The point about this is that this is not solely about women and young people. And I agree with you, women artists could have been the case. The use of Rembrandt is very important because this is a man who is self-reflecting at a moment that everyone is looking at the vanity of things, having things around them in Holland of 17th century. There are women artists, like, let's go back before Kaufmann, such as Artemisia Gentileschi, who paints herself. And that's, I think it's unfair to say it's because she didn't have a model. I think it is a self-expression of a very profound consequence there.
Yeah. Well, I think we're never really going to know quite what Rembrandt was thinking when he was sitting there painting himself. But I think these insights are very.
Get your tickets for the world's largest music and philosophy festival at howthelightgetsin.org.